this week's episode of Sword Art Online 2, Asuna and the Sleeping Knights prepare to throw down with a massive two-headed floor boss. This week's episode was kick-ass. It was such an exciting, high-quality episode, and action anime fans take notice, this is one to check out. It was just a big, fat, action-filled sandwich, filled to the brim with sword-fighting choreography and monster slaying. The stuff you love, and you get to take a big bite right in. What's really great about this episode is I thought that Kirito was going to steal everyone's thunder and that he might actually try and join the Sleeping Knights. But he's just there to act as a diversion, and his opening scene is great. He casually pulls out his sword and starts knocking away all of these magic attacks. And this scene is really well done, and it makes great use of slow motion. And there's a little bit of humor in here as well when Klein suddenly appears out of nowhere. And they don't show him at first, and when you just hear his voice, I just couldn't help but imagine Sanji from One Piece just running in and kicking the shit out of everyone, because they have the same voice actor, and the dude is not even trying to change his voice. Not to be outdone by Kirito and Klein, the Sleeping Knights get in there and start kicking some ass themselves, fighting against some random members of ALO, and even Asuna has this one standout scene where she literally runs back, builds up momentum, and takes out these healers, and it's really impressive. But of course, Yuki is the one who really just steals the show, literally just going left and right, soldier to soldier, player to player, sword to sword, kicking all sorts of ass, and it just never stops. It just keeps going and giving, and it just gets you so excited, and before you know it, they're already at the boss room. The boss battle itself is actually not as impressive as the action scene before it, in my humble opinion, but it's still pretty impressive if only for the scale of it, and of course the big weird monster they're fighting against, which is this massive two-headed giant with these big wooden spiky hammers, and its weak point is so freaking obvious. It's the big fat crystal on its freaking neck. Just attack that. At first, it starts whipping their ass, but then eventually they decide to attack the weak point, and of course, they win. There was no way that they were not going to win. So, that's pretty much it. You'd think that would be the end of the episode, and it almost felt like it was, because that action went on for so long, and it was so incredibly satisfying. And just getting to see the team actually working together, and of course the fact that Yuki is actually referring to Asuna as her sister, is basically opening up the next part of the story, where they finally decide they're going to celebrate, and they all go to Asuna's house. And this is basically the part where you start to realize that something's not quite right, and they hinted at it in the previous episode where they revealed that the Sleeping Knights themselves are going to be disbanded soon, and that's obviously because they have some sort of weird terminal illness, and Yuki doesn't want to get into it at all. She doesn't want to discuss any of this with Asuna, and there's a scene towards the end of the episode where they go to the Swordsman Monument, and they see all of their names up there, and Yuki basically refers to Asuna as her sister again, and then Asuna takes notice to it. She freaks out for a second and immediately logs out of the game, and like I said in the previous reviews, if you actually look at the intro of the show, Yuki herself clearly had a twin sister, and she probably died. And this is just basically opening up old wounds, and the fact that she's sort of like in the same boat is just sort of like amplifying that emotion all the more. And it's also just sad because Asuna just wants to know about Yuki because they now have such a strong connection, so much so that Asuna even wanted to join the Sleeping Knights even though they were about to be disbanded and just be with them until they were done. And obviously that's because they have a really strong connection. And again, that's another thing that I really love about this arc is that it's focusing on the side characters. It's Asuna, and I just think that's really, really awesome. She's really developed as a very motherly figure in this arc. You know, she really comes across that way, and a lot of that probably has to do with how her relationship was built with Kirito and their virtual daughter Yui. And that was a very nice scene where Yui and Kirito left that food out for them. I just thought that was very clever and very nice. This was just a very good episode that's just a roller coaster of emotions, cool action scenes, then it ends up with a nice celebration scene, and then it gets real sad at the end. So it's just a very complex episode, but it was also just a really great one. So what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Sword Art Online 2, it was pretty friggin' awesome. It opens up with a lot of action, and that's definitely going to get your attention, especially because the Sleeping Knights themselves are all very varied, and they have different weapons, and they use them in a lot of really cool ways. And even, like, Kirito did his cool thing. I especially love the scene where they're finally walking into the boss room, and he's putting up the peace sign with a big fiery explosion going on behind him. So freaking metal right there. But honestly, my favorite thing about this week's episode was the assault they had on the other ALO players as they're getting ready to go into the boss room, because all the different members do something really cool. Asuna has that one really great scene, and Yuki, again, just watching her fight is always a lot of fun. She's just so intense, and also just really seems to be enjoying herself while she's doing this. She's really living in the moment, and that has a lot to do with what her character's predicament is in, if they're going to reveal that anytime soon. I can't wait to see what that's going to be. The best things about this week's episode, though, was just the artwork and the animation. It was just handled so well, and there was a lot of times where dialogue wasn't needed, and it worked really well as well. And then that final scene where the team is celebrating and they finally go to the monument, just, they're holding back so much on the reveal of these characters, even though it's very obvious really what's going on with them. And I don't know, I can't wait to see how they're going to wrap that up, because there's only a couple of episodes left in the second season. And obviously, you know, like, the main conflict is done. You know, they've already completed the floor boss. I can't imagine we're going to get too much action from this point on. But I'm still really interested to see where this story is going. And just the timing of it, again, like I said in my previous review, like, the feels and everything, it just kind of gives off that holiday vibe as well. Just, I don't know, I'm really interested to see where this is going. And hopefully it'll lead into even more Sword Art Online in the future, because I'd like to see more from this series. I think there's a lot of potential for it. And if anything, I'd say our action quota was definitely filled with this arc, especially when compared to the first half, which Gun Gale Online is definitely a slow burn. It's still my favorite arc of the series, though. I just love everything about that. But this one right here is just fantastic. It's a great companion piece to the rest of the series. And it's focusing on some brand new characters in Asuna, which is really great. Kirito isn't just the main character all of the time, and I think that's really cool. So, loved the episode, everything about it. I got no complaints. It was just fantastic, everything about it. So I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. Check it out. Fans of Sword Art Online, is really good stuff. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Sword Art Online 2. What did you think of all of the action scenes this week? And what did you think is the deal with Yuki at the very end of the episode? And what do you want to hope to see from the rest of this season of Sword Art Online 2? Remember, if you guys have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You guys can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.